You ever think you've finally escaped the people who broke you, only to realize their shadows still live in the corners of your success? My name is Madison, and I thought I'd built the perfect life, my own business, my own name, my own power. But when my husband and my so called best friend betrayed me, they didn't just take my trust. They tried to take everything. They forged my signature, stole my company, and nearly destroyed my reputation. But they underestimated one thing: a woman who's been burned once doesn't play fair the second time. This isn't just a story about betrayal, it's about how far someone will go when the lies finally stop working. So buckle up, because what started as a marriage turned into a war. They say every marriage looks perfect from the outside. Instagram filters can hide just about anything, even rot. For years, I thought Ethan and I were solid. Not storybook perfect, but the kind of couple that made people sigh and envy. We had matching coffee mugs, a dog named Oliver who thought he was human, and a shared business that was finally taking off. The Event Loft, Austin's most in demand wedding planning agency. I used to wake up before him, watch the sunrise through our downtown condo window, and think, God, I really did it. I built a business from scratch, married a man who made me laugh, and surrounded myself with friends who believed in me, especially Sierra. Sierra was my ride or die. We met freshman year at UT Austin. Two broke girls with big dreams and matching Target notebooks. She was bold, funny, effortlessly magnetic. The kind of woman who could charm her way through a hurricane. When Ethan proposed, she was my maid of honor. I still remember her crying harder than I did during the vows. I should have known then. The cracks started small. Ethan's late nights at client meetings, his new obsession with wearing cologne to the gym. Little things you brush off when you don't want to ruin the picture. Then Sierra started showing up at the office more often, always with some excuse about helping with the books or brainstorming marketing ideas. One afternoon, she dropped a line that hit me wrong. Ethan loves that whiskey I got him for Christmas. Says it helps him sleep. I laughed it off. But later that night, as Ethan poured himself a glass of that same whiskey, I asked where it came from. He said a client gave it to him. And that was when the first seed of doubt sprouted in my gut. 2 weeks later, I was using his iPad to upload photos for a client presentation. A notification popped up, a message preview from Sierra. I wasn't trying to snoop, but curiosity, well, it's a blade you can't unhold. Miss you already. Can't stop thinking about last night. I don't remember breathing after that. I just sat there, reading message after message, scrolling through the wreckage of my own life. Photos, hotel receipts. Her name saved as Sam. Cute, right? My entire body went cold. I wish I could tell you I screamed or threw the iPad or confronted him right then, but I didn't. I closed it, set it down gently, and smiled when he walked in, just like always. Because if I'd learned one thing from years of watching people plan weddings, it's this: appearances are everything. That night, lying beside him in the dark, I decided I wasn't going to lose my mind. I was going to lose them. If this was the love story they wanted, I whispered into the quiet, then I'll give them one. Just not the ending they expect. There's a special kind of power in pretending not to know. After I found those messages, the world didn't end. It just went quiet. I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I just observed. I woke up the next morning, made Ethan his coffee like always: oat milk, two sugars, cinnamon dusted on top. and watched him sip it with a smile. The same lips that whispered, "I love you," were the ones that told Sierra she was his real happiness. I realized then that I'd been living on autopilot, a supporting character in someone else's movie. So I switched roles from wife to observer, from victim to strategist. The first week after finding out was an exercise in self control. Sierra still came to the office at the event loft every other day. She'd sit across from me, scrolling through Pinterest boards, pretending to brainstorm wedding themes while stealing glances at her phone. I'd force a smile. "You okay, Mads? You look tired." "Just busy," I'd reply. "You really need to rest more. Ethan said." "Ethan talks too much." The look on her face was priceless. Just a flicker of panic before she smoothed it away with that fake, soft smile. People underestimate how much information runs through a wedding business. Invoices, client files, private messages, travel receipts. And Ethan handled none of it. That was me. Always me. So when I installed new accounting software, what I really added was a data tracker that mirrored every payment, message, and email from our shared accounts to a private folder. Within days, I had copies of Sierra's fake vendor invoices, all charged to a non existent design consultant in Dallas. Translation: her getaway fund. Each file I opened felt like reclaiming a piece of my sanity. Every time Ethan lied about a late meeting, I'd tag the timestamp. Every receipt, every photo, every excuse. I kept it all. Truth is, revenge isn't rage, it's patience dressed as calm. A week later, I invited them both to dinner at Maddie's on South Congress. For old time's sake. Watching them sit across from me was surreal. Ethan's hand brushed hers under the table. They thought I didn't notice. I smiled through my wine and asked how their projects were going. "Busy," Sierra said almost too quickly. "You and Ethan are always working so hard," I said. "I don't know how you keep up." She laughed, a nervous, brittle sound. Ethan stared at his plate. That's when I decided to test how far they'd go. I booked Sierra a destination wedding consultation in Miami for the next weekend. The flight, the hotel, everything, under the pretense of a high-end client. Ethan's so-called business trip just happened to fall on the same dates. They took the bait. I even got a cheerful text from Sierra at the airport. "Headed out. Don't wait up, boss." My photographer friend in Miami, a favor I'll never have to repay, sent me pictures the next day. Ethan and Sierra holding hands at brunch, kissing in the lobby, checking into the same room, time-stamped crystal clear. I didn't feel heartbreak this time. I felt focus. "You wanted a secret," I whispered to myself that night, looking over the photos. "I'll give you one. But mine will ruin you." And that was the night Madison Blake, the wife, died. And Madison Blake, the quiet observer, was born. By the time they got back from Miami, something in me had gone completely still. Not cold, not angry, just still. Like I'd buried the version of me who believed in love and replaced her with someone who believed in consequences. Ethan came home late that night, smelling like hotel soap and cheap perfume. He kissed my forehead as if nothing had changed. I smiled, told him I'd kept dinner warm, and watched him eat it. That was the moment I realized. I didn't want to scream or throw him out. I wanted him to keep thinking everything was fine. Because when people feel safe, they make mistakes. At the event loft, business was booming. Wedding season was chaos. Couples arguing over floral budgets, bridesmaids fainting during fittings. Through it all, I smiled, directed, and quietly studied Ethan and Sierra. They thought they were subtle. The glances, the accidental touches when they passed each other in the break room. Once I caught Ethan lingering behind her as she adjusted a table display. His hand brushed her back. She jumped, then turned when she saw me watching. Everything okay? I asked. Oh, yeah, just fixing the arrangement, Sierra stammered. I leaned closer to inspect the flowers. You're right, I said softly. Something smells off. I walked away before she could answer. A few nights later, Ethan sat beside me on the couch and sighed like a guilty man rehearsing his apology. You've been quiet lately, he said. Just tired, I replied without looking up from my laptop. You know I love you, right? Of course, I said, and I smiled, just enough to keep him comfortable. He didn't know that on my laptop screen was the spreadsheet I'd built. Every suspicious expense, hotel booking, fake invoice, and text message. A digital obituary of our marriage. That weekend, I texted Sierra. Brunch? My treat? I could use some girl time. She hesitated but agreed. We met at Josephine House, one of those overpriced Austin brunch spots where everything smells like lavender and regret. Sierra arrived in her usual soft pink dress, acting nervous. Too much perfume, too bright a smile. We talked about business, about upcoming weddings, about Ethan, carefully circling the topic like sharks around blood. Then, halfway through her mimosa, I leaned forward and said, You know, secrets always leave stains. Her glass froze halfway to her lips. What do you mean? She asked. I tilted my head, pretending to think. Oh, nothing serious. Just that people should be careful what they spill, especially if they wear someone else's cologne. For a second, the mask slipped. Her face went pale. Then she laughed, fake and brittle. You always have such a dark sense of humor. It's a gift, I said, smiling. That night, back at the office, I stayed late under the glow of my desk lamp. I opened a new design template in our client's software and typed out a mock wedding invitation. Sierra Delgado and Ethan Blake Spring, 2025, a celebration of eternal lies. I printed one on our premium cardstock, the same kind we use for real clients, and pinned it to my office wall. Every day after that, I'd look at it before work. Not as a joke, but as motivation. You wanted to build a love story, I whispered to it. So I'll give you one. But it's going to end at your funeral. Nobody ever reads the fine print, Mr. Patel laughed, tapping his fountain pen against the conference table at the Driscoll Hotel meeting room. They glance, they nod, then sign whatever will get them back to the bar. I'm not anyone, I said, staring at Ethan across the table. I'm the person who reads it. Madison, relax, Ethan said, leaning back, fingers steepled. This is just housekeeping. We clean up the company structure, make it tax efficient. You do the events. I handle investor relations. It's smarter, that's all. Sierra smiled from beside him, like everything in the world was a pastel Instagram filter. So professional, she cooed. I'm so proud of us. I pushed the tablet toward Ethan. Sign here and here. It converts the Event Loft LLP into a holding structure under Blake Group, LLC, for better brand clarity. He skimmed 2 lines, glanced at the total, and scribbled his initials. There. Done, you're sure? Mr. Patel asked. This gives Madison a controlling membership interest while maintaining operational parity. For investor eyes, it looks like continuity. Ethan shrugged. If you say it's safe, it's safe. Later in my office, Jenny dropped a stack of vendor contracts on my desk. They want Sierra as the public face of the rebrand, she said. Marketing's pumped. Perfect, I said, turning one over. Read this aloud. She read. Vendor X agrees to render services contingent on payment authorization by the designated client, hereafter principal. In the event of payment default, the principal or their designated guarantor shall be liable for full invoice amounts plus cancellation penalties. Non-refundable deposits shall not be refunded under any circumstances. Okay, Jenny frowned. That sounds normal. It's the clause I asked for, I said. Make a note. Every vendor, every contract must include non-refundable deposits and guarantor language. Make Sierra the guarantor on the rebrand launch. You can't, Jenny started. I already did, I said. Read the email from marketing. She scrolled. Please sign the attached brand ambassador agreement and company liaison addendum to be included in the public rollout packet. That one? Yes. It has the addendum where the signer accepts financial responsibility for promotional liabilities and event-related fees connected to their named campaigns. Jenny's eyes widened. She'll sign it because it's flattering. She'll sign it because it sounds official and featured. That's the point. I tap my pen. Make it glamorous. Make it viral. Make it feel like a red carpet. People sign red carpet things without thinking about the bill. The day I presented the public phasing plan at the launch party, Sierra beamed into my video camera. It's my honor to lead Blake Group's new identity, she said, practicing the cadence I'd coached her on. Madison and Ethan are visionaries. She kissed Ethan's cheek on camera. We're all family here. Later, when the legal addendum was emailed for final review and signature, Sierra forwarded it to me with a line. Mad, what a dream. Sign and return. XO. I opened the PDF. My cursor hovered over the authorization/guarantor signature box I'd quietly set as required for the launch ambassador position. I typed my name into a separate field labeled Prepared By, printed a copy to my shelf, and then I watched her sign. Signed. Her text read 3 minutes later with a string of heart emojis. I watched the notification pop up on my phone. My chest did something weird and quiet. A soft mechanical clack, like the sound a lock makes before it clicks shut. That night I told Ethan casually, "You did the right thing converting the company." He laughed. "We did," he corrected. "All ownership and charm?" "We did." I held back the list of line items I'd run through the books earlier that day, vendor payment schedules, the rebrand budget, the non-refundable deposits that added up to almost $400,000. By the way, I said, smiling sweet and harmless, did you ever actually read Section 12 of the launch agreement? He looked confused. Which one? Never mind, I said. You've got clients to call. I'm exhausted. Night, love. He kissed my cheek, unaware. Outside, the night over South Congress vibrated with music and neon. Inside, I pinned Sierra's signed addendum to the corkboard beside the mock invitation I'd printed months ago. The paper rustled like a promise. My rebrand is perfect, I whispered to it, and so will be your fall. Downstairs, the phone on my desk rang. It was the venue coordinator for a high-dollar launch party. Madison, she said, voice urgent. We need final payment authorization on the Blake Group launch. The caterer's demanding a 75% non-refundable deposit to hold the date. It's $312,500. The corkboard blurred. My mouth went dry. Tell them to invoice Sierra Delgado, I said, voice steady. She's the launch guarantor. Send it by email. The coordinator sighed, relieved. On it, I set the phone down and stared at the invitation on the wall. Sierra Delgado and Ethan Blake. Spring 2025. Perfect indeed, I murmured. And for the first time, I allowed myself a smile that wasn't practiced. The click of a pen echoing from the meeting room, the snap of the lock, the first domino trembling in its place. It's strange how silence can be louder than shouting. After the rebrand launch, the office buzzed with champagne laughter and self congratulations. Sierra's face was plastered all over the new campaign posters, the future of event luxury. Her smile, my logo, Ethan's charm, the perfect trio. Only one of us knew the real script. 2 weeks after the rebrand, I started laying the groundwork for the storm. Every vendor payment now funneled through Sierra Delgado Marketing Lead. Every lease agreement, every floral shipment, every urgent rebrand expenditure routed with her digital signature. The company credit card statements were now small landmines of luxury. Designer dresses, spa weekends, five-star dinners for client networking. Ethan didn't notice because Sierra was smart enough to file everything under branding. I noticed, of course, I even approved them. Every swipe of her card tightened the noose. It started with whispers, vendors calling to confirm delayed payments, the hotel manager from the launch gala emailing to say the check had bounced. Sierra brushed it off with her usual sugar-coated arrogance. Oh, that's just accounting. Madison's handling it funny, I'd reply. Accounting says you are. She'd laugh nervously, flip her hair, and say, You're such a joker. Ethan, meanwhile, was too wrapped up in his next affair. A new client, ironically. The man could barely manage one lie before tripping into another. I watched them both unravel in slow motion, and all I did was smile. 3 weeks later, I called a team strategy session at the Thompson Hotel downtown. The entire core staff came: marketing, operations, Ethan, and of course, Sierra, sitting front row with her pastel notepad and fake confidence. I opened my laptop and connected it to the projector. The screen lit up with our company ledger. We've had a concerning pattern of expenditures, I began calmly. Non client related charges, luxury goods, private travel. Sierra froze. Ethan blinked. That's a mistake, she said quickly. I thought so too, I replied, clicking to the next slide. A scanned copy of her signed guarantor agreement. Her face drained of color. That's not your signature? I asked. Because this document gives you full financial liability for every unauthorized expense tied to the rebrand. Ethan sat up, confused. Wait, what are you talking about? I turned to him, voice steady. Every debt, every bounced payment, every lawsuit that may follow, it's all under her name. You both signed the restructuring paperwork. You gave me controlling interest. She's the guarantor silence, the kind that feels like thunder before lightning. You set me up, Sierra hissed. No, I said softly. You set yourself up. You just didn't bother to read the fine print. Ethan stormed out first, face red, muttering curses. Sierra stayed seated, shaking. I gathered my papers calmly. Madison, please, she whispered. We can fix this. There's nothing to fix, I replied, slipping the documents into my bag. It's already done. The investors will see the financials in the morning. You'll have plenty of explaining to do, her eyes filled with tears. You can't ruin me. I looked down at her. The woman who stole my husband, my business partner, my peace. Sierra, I said, voice even, you ruined yourself the moment you decided to play games in my house. I turned to leave, but paused in the doorway. Oh, and one more thing. Don't book any flights. Your corporate card's been deactivated. The sound of her breaking down behind me was beautiful. Outside Austin's skyline glowed gold against the dusk. I stood on the hotel steps, phone buzzing in my hand. It was Ethan. 10 missed calls already. I ignored them and opened my email instead. Subject line: Investor Files Confidential. I hit send. Then, for the first time in months, I laughed. Not the polite kind, the real kind. The kind that sounds like freedom wrapped in fire. You can feel it when a storm breaks. That eerie stillness right before thunder rolls. That's what the Monday after the strategy session felt like. The city was buzzing, coffee shops full of people scrolling their phones, oblivious that somewhere in downtown Austin, the walls of Blake Group LLC were about to crumble. At 8:17 a.m., my phone started vibrating nonstop. Not texts, not calls, notifications, mentions, tags, alerts. The gossip blogs got it first, then the trade outlets. By 10 a.m., Austin Business Journal had published a headline: Scandal hits Blake Group. Financial mismanagement allegations and internal betrayal. The article had everything: leaked invoices, screenshots, even quotes from an anonymous insider. Thank you, Jenny. Confirming the spending trail under Sierra's name. By noon, 3 of our biggest investors had frozen their funding. By 2, Ethan was calling a blocked number. What the hell did you do, Madison? He shouted the moment I answered. Me, I said calmly. You're the CEO, remember? You handled the investors. They're saying Sierra embezzled hundreds of thousands. You're married to her, I said. You should probably talk to your wife about that. Silence. Then a low growl. You planned this. No, I whispered. I predicted this. And I hung up. That night, I watched the news segment replay on TV from my penthouse balcony overlooking Lady Bird Lake. Sierra was crying on camera, claiming she was framed. Her mascara had smudged just enough to look tragic. I was just trying to build something beautiful, she told the reporter. Madison, she twisted everything. Behind her, Ethan stood stiff, expression unreadable. The anchor's voice cut in. Sources confirm internal documents show Sierra Delgado as the financial guarantor for the company's failed rebrand, which has left multiple vendors unpaid. Legal action is reportedly underway. I muted the TV. The reflection of the city lights danced on my wine glass. Inside, my phone buzzed again. It was a text from Jenny. Jenny. They're turning on each other. Sierra filed a defamation suit against Ethan. Investors pulled the plug. You're clean. I typed back. Me. Keep everything archived. Every message, every file. Then I opened my laptop. The front page of the Event Loft website still had their smiling photo. Ethan and Sierra at the launch party. I clicked remove. Now it was just the company name, my logo, and one clean line of text. Now under new ownership. 2 days later, I went to the office to collect personal items. The building was half empty. The quiet kind of chaos that happens when everyone's pretending not to stare. Ethan was waiting in my office, tie loose, eyes bloodshot. They're seizing our accounts, he said hoarsely. Correction, I said, sliding my access badge onto the desk. They're seizing her accounts. Mine were moved weeks ago. He stared at me. Why? I met his gaze steady. Because you made me the invisible wife for years. Now you'll feel what it's like to vanish. He laughed bitterly. You ruined her life. No, I said. I just handed her the mirror. She did the rest. He stepped closer, voice shaking. You're not human. No, I whispered, brushing past him. I'm just finally free. As I left, the building security was escorting Sierra out in tears. She saw me, stopped cold, I can't, and hissed, You won't get away with this. I leaned in, close enough for only her to hear. You should have read the fine print, sweetheart. Then I walked away. Within a week, the rebrand lawsuit hit every media outlet. Sierra lost her apartment, her career, and, according to a headline on page 6, her sanity. Ethan tried to play damage control, but the investors blacklisted him after discovering he'd co signed several of her fraudulent invoices. Their marriage, over, their reputations, shredded. And me? I quietly rebranded again under my maiden name, Madison Hart Designs. The investors who'd once doubted me now courted me. I didn't need vengeance anymore. The system delivered it for me. The following month, I hosted a new launch party, elegant, serene, candlelit. Same ballroom as before, new name on the banner. As the lights dimmed, a violinist began to play. I stood in front of the crowd, wearing the emerald gown Sierra once mocked me for. To reinvention, I said, raising my glass, and to reading the fine print. The audience laughed. The cameras flashed. And somewhere across town, two people sat in silence, realizing that the woman they'd underestimated had written their ending long before they ever began. 6 months later, I had almost convinced myself the storm was over. The lawsuits, the articles, the endless calls from reporters, all gone. Austin had moved on to its next scandal, and I'd reemerged like a phoenix wrapped in silk. My company, Heart Atelier, was thriving. My face had appeared in Forbes Women in Business under the headline, From Betrayal to $1 Billion Brilliance. I'd done morning talk shows, podcast interviews, and elegant networking brunches. Everything was quiet again. Too quiet. It arrived on a Wednesday morning, slipped beneath my office door in a plain white envelope with no return address. Inside, one line typed in courier font. You forgot to check who signed the original incorporation papers. No signature, no name, just that. My stomach sank. That phrase, incorporation papers, was a blade aimed straight at my control of the company. I pulled open my old files, digital and paper both, each document in its place, perfectly archived. But the LLC paperwork from 2 years ago was missing one key page. The original notarized amendment from before Ethan and I restructured. The one that determined who truly owned the event loft before the merger. And the name listed on that version? Sierra Delgado. I saw her again 3 days later, at the Peacock Room, downtown, full of glass, gold, and whispers. She was thinner, sharper, and somehow more dangerous in defeat. Her once perfect hair was dyed jet black, and she wore sunglasses indoors, like someone who had something to hide or something to reveal. You look alive, I said as I approached her table. You look rich, she replied flatly. Congratulations. I didn't sit. What do you want? She smirked. To make a deal. She pulled out her phone and slid it across the table. On the screen was a scanned PDF. The event loft's original ownership certificate, notarized and signed 6 months before I restructured it. You kept copies? I asked quietly. Of course, she said, sipping her martini. You taught me to read the fine print, remember? I took a slow breath. So what's your angle? 50%, she said, of your new company. In exchange, I don't file this with the IRS and the press. A little technical glitch like that could make your empire look questionable. I laughed. Short, sharp, humorless. You think blackmail works on me? She leaned forward. No, I think guilt does. When I returned to my office that night, a small padded envelope was waiting on my desk. Inside, a flash drive, unlabeled. I hesitated, then plugged it in. The folder opened automatically. Hundreds of files, images, recordings, screenshots. Most were from my time with Ethan. But buried inside was one video clip dated May 12th, 2023. The day I landed in Santorini for that old wedding job that started everything. The footage showed Sierra in my old office at the event firm, whispering to Ethan over wine. Sierra, don't worry, she'll sign it. She always signs things without reading Ethan. You sure this'll hold up? Sierra, it'll make me partner. That's all I need. I froze. This wasn't evidence against me, it was evidence against them. Proof that my entire downfall years ago had been premeditated. But there was more. A new file, recently dated, labeled insurance. When I opened it, I saw a familiar signature. Mine. On a set of documents that transferred assets from Hart Atelier to a shell company in Delaware. One registered under Sierra's fake name. She'd somehow gotten into my system. Again. By morning, I was already moving. I met with my attorney, Mr. Patel, the same man who'd helped me set the original trap. He skimmed through the files, face unreadable. She's clever, he said, but not bulletproof. You still have the controlling signature authority over every operating account. Freeze the assets, move them under a temporary holding trust. Then we call the IRS first. Before she does? Exactly. Control the narrative before she weaponizes it. That night, I posted a polished press statement. Hart Atelier has initiated an internal audit following a digital breach by a former associate. No client data was compromised, and legal action is pending. Sierra responded 2 hours later on social media. Funny. She's the one who taught me everything I know about betrayal. The post went viral overnight. 2 days later, my assistant Jenny burst into my office, pale and shaking. Madison, she's here. Before I could ask who, the glass doors opened, and Ethan walked in. Disheveled, unshaven, eyes burning. We need to talk, he said, voice trembling. Sierra's dead. Time stopped. I blinked. What? Car crash, he said. 2 hours ago. Police said her brakes failed. But the thing is, he reached into his jacket pocket and placed something on my desk. A small gold flash drive, identical to the one Sierra had sent me. She left this in her apartment safe, he said. It's labeled for Madison. I didn't move, just stared at it. Because deep down, I already knew. Whatever was on that drive would change everything. And somewhere, even in death, Sierra was still playing her game. It was after midnight when I finally opened the flash drive. The city outside my penthouse was quiet, too quiet, the kind of silence that makes your own heartbeat sound intrusive. I poured a glass of wine, set it beside the laptop, and told myself I was ready. I wasn't. The folder was labeled Madison Read Me Last. Inside were subfolders, photos, recordings, documents, and one labeled Confession. My hand hovered over the trackpad before I clicked it. A video began to play. Sierra sat in a dark room, hair tied back, eyes raw and unguarded. She wasn't wearing makeup. I almost didn't recognize her. If you're watching this, she began softly, I guess you already know I'm gone. I didn't kill myself, at least not intentionally. But I know how this looks. She paused, exhaling shakily. You always said I was reckless, Madison. And you were right. But what you never understood was why she leaned forward until her face filled the frame. Her voice trembled as she continued. You think you were the only one Ethan lied to? You think you were the only one he destroyed? I frowned, my pulse spiking. He made me believe he'd left you long before we ever started, Sierra said. He told me you'd drained the accounts, that you forged his signature on the first partnership contract. He said you were blackmailing him, that I was saving him. She laughed bitterly. And I believed him. God, I believed him. The video ended abruptly, replaced by a series of audio recordings. I clicked the first one. Ethan. She'll sign it. She always does. Just make sure it looks official. Sierra. You're sure about this? You're putting her name on the liability section. Ethan. If it burns down, she takes the fall. That's what wives are for. The room spun. The floor beneath me felt like it tilted. He'd played both of us. Every lie, every betrayal, every war we'd waged had been orchestrated by him. At the bottom of the folder was a single PDF file. Amendment underscore transfer underscore 2019.pdf. I opened it and my stomach dropped. It was the original incorporation document for the event loft, but this one had a third signature. Mine, hers, and Ethan's. But under witness to partnership agreement, another name appeared. E. Harrison, notary, state of Texas. Mr. Harrison, my old boss from the auction house, the man who'd first taught me about fine print. Except his signature wasn't real. The notary stamp had expired 2 years before the date on the document. It was a forgery. Ethan had forged the entire contract that gave him power, and we'd both built our empires on a fraud. Another file popped open automatically. A final video. Sierra again, but this time she wasn't alone. Ethan sat beside her, smirking. Ethan, if this goes south, I'll blame you. You can handle it, right? Sierra, you said we'd fix it after. Ethan, relax, baby. By the time Madison finds out, she'll be too busy covering her own ass. He looked directly at the camera, almost like he knew one day I'd see it. If she ever comes after us, he said, this will make sure she burns too. The screen went black. For a moment, I sat there, staring at my reflection in the dark glass of my laptop screen. Then I laughed, quietly at first, then uncontrollably. He'd thought he was untouchable. He'd thought both women he destroyed would stay blind forever. But Sierra had flipped the board in her final move. She'd left me the evidence to destroy him completely. By morning, I'd made up my mind. I printed every document, every email, every audio file. Then I called the one journalist who'd covered the scandal the most accurately, Lydia Perez from Austin Ledger. We met at Cafe No Say on South Congress. She looked exhausted but intrigued. You have something for me. No, I said. I have everything. I handed her the flash drive, the folder, the printouts. When you publish this, or I added, make sure you start the story with this line. He thought he owned everything, including the truth. She nodded, eyes wide. Is this revenge? I sipped my coffee. No, this is housekeeping. The next day, the headline hit every screen in Texas. Prominent Austin entrepreneur under federal investigation. Evidence of fraud, forgery, and embezzlement. Tied to Ethan Blake. The footage rolled, agents at his house, files in boxes, the words under federal review flashing across the screen. As for me, I watched it from my balcony, just as I had when Sierra's world burned. Only this time, I felt something I hadn't before. Not victory. Not relief. Just peace. Sierra hadn't died my enemy after all. In the end, she'd become my avenger. They say revenge is best served cold, but I learned something new. Justice tastes better when it's served in public. The story about Ethan Blake spread like wildfire. By the end of the week, every major outlet from the Austin Ledger to Forbes Legal Watch had run the same headline: Fraudulent Empire. Ethan Blake's forged contracts under federal scrutiny. It should have ended there. But Ethan wasn't the kind of man who went quietly. It started with a knock on my office door one Monday morning. Jenny poked her head in, her face pale. "There's someone here for you," she said softly. Two federal agents stood outside, badges gleaming under the fluorescent light. "Ms. Hart," one said, "we're serving you a subpoena. You've been named as a party to the case against Ethan Blake." For a moment, the room tilted. Me? I opened the folder. My name appeared on page 1, Madison Hart, co-signatory and former business partner. He'd done it again, dragged me into the mess he created. The internet exploded overnight. Hashtag Hart in Court trended on Twitter. Podcasts debated whether I'd been part of Ethan's scheme all along. Lydia Perez, bless her soul, reached out immediately. "You knew this was coming," she said on the phone. "He's cornered and desperate. You're the only person who can sink him. And how exactly do I do that? By telling the truth, all of it, on record." So I did. 2 days later, I sat across from federal investigators in a glass-walled conference room, a recorder blinking red on the table. I told them everything, from the forged signatures to the fake incorporation, from Sierra's confession video to Ethan's manipulation. When I was done, one of the agents leaned back and said, "You realize this clears you completely, Ms. Hart." I exhaled for the first time in weeks. Then I guess it's about time someone in this story walked away clean. By autumn, the case was national news. Blake versus the state of Texas. He looked smaller on the witness stand, pale, hollow-eyed, wearing a cheap gray suit that didn't fit his once arrogant frame. The courtroom buzzed as he took the oath. His lawyer tried to paint me as the silent partner, the woman who benefited from the fraud. When my turn came, I stepped up in a tailored navy suit and calm composure that screamed control. "Ms. Hart," the defense attorney said, smirking, "did you or did you not sign the founding documents of the event loft?" "I did," I said evenly. "But the version I signed wasn't the one presented to the IRS. That version was altered." "Altered by whom?" "Ethan Blake," I said clearly, pointing across the courtroom. He glared at me, jaw tightening. I met his gaze without flinching. Halfway through the trial, Ethan's team tried one final trick. His lawyer produced a hard drive claiming it contained unreleased correspondence implicating Madison Hart in the fraudulent transfers. The judge granted a recess while the files were reviewed. I sat in silence as my attorney, Mr. Patel, plugged in the drive. A folder popped open. Confidential recordings. He clicked the first file. Ethan's voice filled the room. "If they find out the Delaware shell's fake, I'll just blame her. She's used to being the villain, the second recording. Delete the backups. I'll make it look like she transferred the money herself." By the fourth clip, even the prosecutor was shaking his head. It wasn't just evidence, it was self-destruction. Mr. Patel closed the laptop and looked at the judge. "Your Honor, I believe my client's innocence just proved itself." The courtroom broke into whispers. Ethan's lawyer went white. And for the first time since the day he betrayed me, I saw fear in Ethan Blake's eyes. When the gavel finally fell, it was over. Guilty, sir. on all counts: fraud, forgery, and financial manipulation. He was sentenced to 15 years in federal prison. As the bailiffs led him away, he looked back at me one last time. "You think you've won?" he snarled. "No," I said quietly. "I survived." The following weeks were surreal. Journalists flooded my inbox. Investors sent congratulations. But the only message that mattered came from an unknown number. "You finished it." She'd be proud. No name. But I knew who it was from: Sierra's cousin, the one who'd arranged the transfer of that final flash drive. I stared at the text for a long time, then typed back, "She saved me in the end." And maybe in her own twisted way, Sierra really had. A month later, I walked through the empty ballroom where the event loft once hosted its grandest parties. The chandeliers still sparkled, but the walls echoed with ghosts, laughter, lies, and lessons. I stood in the center, the air thick with dust and memory. "To the fine print," I whispered. Then I turned off the lights and walked out, leaving the door open behind me. Not for anyone else to enter, but so that the past could finally leave. It's strange how quiet life becomes when the war is over. No court dates, no lawyers, no late night phone calls filled with threats or apologies that aren't really apologies, just silence. 6 months after the verdict, I found myself back where it all began: Austin's East Side, where the event loft once stood. The building had been sold to developers. In its place, steel beams and glass skeletons of future condos reached toward the skyline. I stood across the street in my car, window down, watching workers in hard hats move with purpose. A strange sense of symmetry washed over me. Something old had been demolished. Something new was being built. For the first time in years, I didn't feel the urge to look back. The ghosts of my past don't haunt me like they used to. Sierra with her sharp smile and sharper ambition. Ethan with his perfect lies and flawless charm. Even the woman I used to be. The one who believed that love and loyalty were enough to protect you. They're all still here, whispering somewhere behind me, but softer now. Sometimes I still dream of Sierra. In those dreams, she's sitting on a balcony overlooking the ocean, hair blowing in the wind. She doesn't look angry anymore, she looks free. I like to think that in her final act, she wasn't just avenging herself, she was setting me free too. 3 months ago, I was invited to give a keynote at a women's entrepreneurship conference in New York. The topic: resilience in the face of betrayal. I almost said no. Then I remembered the version of me who used to cry in hotel bathrooms between client meetings, pretending everything was fine. She deserved to be heard. Standing on that stage, I looked out at hundreds of faces: women who had been burned, underestimated, or silenced, and I told them the truth. "Revenge doesn't fix you," I said. "It just shows you how broken you were willing to become to make someone else feel your pain. But justice, real justice, that's different. It's quiet. It's clean. It's the sound of your own voice finally echoing louder than their lies." When I finished, the applause was like thunder. And for the first time, I didn't feel like an imposter. I felt like someone who'd finally earned her peace. A week later, a letter arrived in my office mail. Plain white envelope, no return address. I didn't need to open it to know who it was from. Still, I did. "Madison, they say you find out who you really are when you lose everything. I don't like who I've become. Maybe I never did. But I need you to know, Sierra didn't deserve what happened. Neither did you. Ethan." I read it once, then again. Then I tore it into pieces and dropped them into the trash. Some things don't need closure. Some things just need to end. It's early spring now. The air smells like rain and rebirth. My new home sits on the outskirts of town, surrounded by oak trees and a small garden I planted myself. Roses, hydrangeas, lavender, colors and scents that remind me that life can be gentle again. I spend mornings there, hands in the soil, dirt under my nails, grounding myself in something real. No contracts, no lawyers, no battles, just earth. Sometimes when the sun rises through the trees, I hear the faint sound of Sierra's laugh or the echo of my own younger voice, the one that once trembled, now steady as breath. And I smile. If there's one thing I've learned, it's this: people will break you, and they'll do it with a smile. They'll twist love into leverage, loyalty into debt. But if you survive it, if you face the wreckage without flinching, you become something indestructible. Not bitter, not vengeful, just whole. So when people ask me now if I'd do it all again, if I'd still choose the same path, knowing the pain, the betrayal, the loss, I always give the same answer: yes, because peace doesn't come from forgiveness. It comes from finally being able to say, "You can't touch me anymore." And as the morning light spills over the garden, I close my eyes and let it wash over me. Warm, honest, unfiltered. The war is over, and for once I've won not by fighting, but by letting go. I used to think revenge would fix everything, that once they fell, I'd finally feel whole again. But here's the truth: revenge doesn't heal you, it just shows you how deep the wound went. The real victory isn't in watching them lose, it's in walking away without needing to look back. I lost everything that used to define me: my marriage, my friends, my faith in people. But what I gained was something stronger: peace. So if you've ever been betrayed, lied to, or left for dead in someone else's story, remember this: you're allowed to rebuild yourself, you're allowed to start over. And sometimes, the best revenge is finally living a life they can't touch. My name is Madison, and this was The Price of Peace.